Hi, I'm Jeffrey Church. This is the School of Public Policy. I'm here at the National Press Gallery. We've just released a paper published by the School of Public Policy on the state of competition in wireless markets in Canada. The perception out there that's motivating the government's public policy agenda is that prices are too high in Canada, and that problem of too high of prices is attributable to a lack of competition. So what this paper does, that summarizes the results of our research at the School of Public Policy, is we do three things. One is we look at the arguments that have been made by individuals who allege that we have a competition problem. So their arguments are based on international comparisons of performance. And so we look at those arguments and decide whether or not they have any validity, both on the face of them, whether they tell us anything about Canada's international performance, and whether they are at all relevant to assessing issues of competition. Second thing we do is we develop metrics which are appropriate to assess the state of competition in wireless markets in Canada, paying particular attention to the technological features of wireless service provision. And the third thing we do then is we assess the viability of further entry in this market, the financial implications for entrants and the industry of shoehorning more firms in. And we also ask whether it's efficient, whether it's a good use of Canadians' resources. The government seems to have decided that they are responsible for the level of cell phone prices, and the cell phone prices are too high because we have a lack of competition. So they are committed to a policy of having 4 carriers in every region, and they are moving mountains with their policy agenda, policy levers, to try and attract further entry or to support. And so really the idea is that we had 3 national entrants who came in the 2008 AWS auction, where spectrum was set aside for them to allow them to enter. They're in grave financial difficulty, and so the government's scrambling, trying to figure out how we can somehow create at least one competitor. So what the paper did is we have these 3 issues. First issue is that we address is we take on the argument about penetration rate versus ARPU. We find that the penetration rate that's used by the critics of the industry, the critics of performance in Canada, is biased based on institutional and market practices in other parts of the world which aren't applicable to Canada. If we look at other measures of output, minutes per use, smartphone adoption, those kind of things, Canada is actually very close to being the world leader, especially with smartphone use, attributable to our very good networks. Second part about that is that it actually doesn't tell you anything about competition in the country. International comparisons like that don't. So the second part of the paper, we say, what are valid metrics which tell us something about the state of competition? How close to costs are prices? Because that's really what we like competition for. And that's the appropriate way to decide whether you have insufficient competition. We developed 2 metrics. One is looking at the internal rate of return, the profitability of Rogers through time. If it had market power, if it was earning monopoly profits, we'd expect its internal rate of return to be very high. We don't find that at all. We find its internal rate of return to be something on the order of 10%, which doesn't reflect its ex-ante risk, doesn't reflect market power and monopoly profits. The second competition measure that we look at is we look and say, all right, what's the market structure across countries? Is it true that other countries have small number of players and concentrated markets? And the answer is yes, and in fact our market is less concentrated than lots of other markets. Third thing we do is we look at the viability of entry, and we look at the welfare effects of entry. And what we find is that there seems to be the technology suggests a natural limit. There's only so many firms that you can jam in the market because there's advantages to being large. And if you try to jam too many firms into the market, margins will be too low, firms will lose money, they will exit and consolidate. That's exactly what we see from policy experiments in Canada and around the world for the last 15 years as governments have tried to shoehorn in more carriers. The result has been exit and consolidation back to what I call the natural limit. Seems like 3 firms. So viability is going to be an issue. And if viability is an issue, there's also a public policy issue about the allocation of resources. Is it appropriate? Is it good economics? Is it good public policy to subsidize further entry? And our analysis suggests no, right? The Canadians are ill-served by forcing in additional carriers into this market, that the costs exceed the benefits. I'm Jeffrey Church. This is the School of Public Policy. Thank you very much for watching.